Football season is here.
Shotgun snap to Lovey, bobbles for a moment, now lost it. Right side of the end zone, Watson leaping grab. Oh, sensational touchdown catch!
Packers training camp is underway in Green Bay, and nobody is bringing you closer to the action than us.
We are enjoying some special teams work, some individual drills right now for the offense and defensive linemen, DBs in front of us.
All of the storylines, all of the emerging stars, and all of the big plays out of camp. Analyzed by two guys who know Packers football inside and out.
Quarterbacks at this time of year, veteran quarterbacks especially, they'll be trying throws here that they wouldn't try elsewhere.
Now, live from the perch above Ray Nitschke Field, with the voice of the Packers, Wayne Larrivee.
And the Packers deliver the dagger.
Here is Packers OT host, Bill Schmid.
As the 2026 season begins, the championships and the wins and losses start on the grass behind the Don Hudson Center. The man that'll call all the touchdowns and the highlights, Wayne Larrivee, to my right. I'm Bill Schmid. This is Training Camp Live on Fox Sports Radio, Wisconsin, 1070 AM in Madison, 920 AM in Milwaukee. Hello, YouTube, X, and Facebook, streaming along with us here. I'm Billy Schmid, and Wayne, appreciate it as always. This is one of the pleasures and joys of this job. But, man, when it's the first day of school, you get a little bit different jitters when you come up here to the perch.
You really do, don't you, Billy? I mean, it is. It's kind of like the start of things, so there's a lot of anticipation. There are a lot of fans here. There's great juice in the air, so to speak. And then so you get through this first couple of days, and then the pads come on. You're excited about that. And then you can't wait for the preseason games to start. And within about a quarter of a preseason game, you say, when's the regular season going to get underway?
How quickly does this get done?
To the regular season.
It is a race to get going and then a race to get done with preseason. And it's so different. We were listening to Brian Gutekunst earlier on here today, and he made mention of his first couple of camps when there were multiple two-a-days and two padded practices in a day. Long gone are those days where you have to be so diligent with how much time you get on the field. And it is a very sparing amount of time and dwindles by the year with the CBA, that there's a lot of work that has to be done. But, Wayne, this is like syllabus week in school where you can get a couple of things done, but really you're showing up, making sure everybody's checking the couple of physical boxes. Then the real work will start.
This is the ramp-up period, Bill. It's something that came about of the collective bargaining agreement, I believe, of 2011, if I'm not mistaken, when we started to see major change in training camp and the way teams go about their business because of what was negotiated in the collective bargaining agreement. So this is a ramp-up period. What we're seeing out here today, for those who aren't here, and I assume if you're listening, you're not here. So
now there might be some here. I was going to say, there might be some earbuds. There's some here on the perch that get to listen to us.
But at any rate, the guys are in helmets, in jerseys, and shorts. It's the ramp-up period of training camp. And this is a lot of what we saw at OTAs and minicamp all spring. Now, next week, when the pads come on, that's when it really begins.
And you got to see a lot of that at OTAs and minicamp, Wayne, and something that felt like a bit of a common theme from that was the little bit of newness that you kind of almost forget the Packers have. New defensive coordinator, new special teams coordinator.
Yeah.
You're only going to be able to see a lot of the defensive changes that Jonathan Gannon is going to bring. But the alignment assignment is one thing you can see in shorts, and it feels like they're going to be quite different and a little bit varied in how they line up coming up this year.
I think you're right, Billy. And when your base is 3-4, you're usually a little more varied. You know what I mean? And what you do with those outside linebackers, we today call them edge rushers. That's a little different maybe than it would be in a straight 4-3. But nonetheless, Jonathan Gannon's known for creativity, he disguises the zone defenses he runs really well. At least that's what we saw when he was in Philadelphia. That's what we saw in Arizona. I think this is going to be interesting. I think his defense is going to be good for the personnel they have. This is not like Dom Capers in 2009 coming in and changing a 4-3, stacked 4-3 defense into a 3-4. And the way defenses are run and the way the game is played today, much different from that time. But so I think regardless of whether you play 4-3 or 3-4 as your base, you play it very little. You play a lot of variations off of that.
And you have so many different – I like how you mentioned it, the players they have in-house. You can only flip over a roster so much, right? And a team that was at one point last year before you end the game on a 5-game L streak. You are in position to hold the number 1 overall seed. You don't have a ton of spots, but you need to get an infusion of talent and mix them around. I think the quantity of players they have in the outside linebacker, edge rusher, inside linebackers who might be able to rush. I'm looking at you, Edgerrin Cooper, and maybe Tyron Hopper.
Yeah.
They have a lot of bodies that he could play around with, and it might be a lot different personnel packages than just traditionally speaking.
I think so, and I think one of the subtle keys to what they're going to be able to do defensively, Billy, is Zaire Franklin in the middle of that defense. Okay, here's the guy. He's going to have the green dot, which means he'll communicate the defense that Gannon sends in from the sidelines, folks. He'll be the communicator on that second level. And I think the difference between he and Quay Walker, Zaire Franklin's not the flat-out athlete, the running type of athlete that Quay Walker is.
Totally.
But what he brings is a certain amount of football intelligence and instinct to that position that maybe Quay didn't have quite as much of in abundance. Quay's a very good player, is a great player for the Packers here for many years. But I think when you bring in Franklin now, you probably free up Cooper to not just, I think a lot, Jeff Hafley last year used Cooper a lot in coverage. Why? Because he was probably their best coverage linebacker, from an athletic standpoint, and he covered better than Quay Walker did. But I loved the combination of Cooper and Walker on the inside of that defense. They were very good tacklers. They were one of the reasons why the Packers were the best tackling defense in football. And before the bottom fell out late in the season, they were also a very good run defense because of the lateral speed. People could not get around the end against those linebackers. Now, Franklin brings a lot of know-how, savvy, and that's what makes up for his quote-unquote lack of speed in comparative terms with Quay Walker.
And it's something that feels a little bit different, in a contrast to how they've built the team over the last couple of years. One of the main things we've talked about is this team's going to have to grow up quick, right? The last couple of years, it's been the youngest team in football. This year, in contrary, they went and added 3 guys that are on their 3rd contracts. Now, Benjamin St. Juste with his 3rd team, and Javon Hargrave into his 30s. Franklin going with his 2nd team, but he's been highly lauded in Indianapolis. And it feels like that veteran leadership, Wayne, one thing that we all understand and know, and they've talked about it enough whenever a microphone's been in front early, and I think we'll hear it a lot when the players start talking, is needing to close games better. And I wonder how much the veteran presence is one of the ways they're trying to Band-Aid or cure some of that.
A certain amount of, I guess, know-how. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it was a very young team. And then when they suffered injuries, and again, folks, it's not the number of injuries they had. It is who got injured. And you could argue that 5 of their top 8 players were injured at the end of last year, gone. Okay? Start with Micah Parsons, Tucker Kraft. People forget Zach Tom didn't play after Denver. Devontae Wyatt, who was a huge key in the middle of that defense. There are a number of guys they were missing at the end of last year that really had an impact on what they were able to do. But I do think the additions they made in free agency, the 3 players you mentioned, Billy, they were brought here not only because they're good players, but because they have experience, they have know-how, they can add to this group in those intangible areas that hopefully will make a difference late in games.
And they've also really let these guys grow together. I know Brian made mention of that in his opening press conference earlier on today, talking about the offensive players, right, all growing in now year 4 with Jordan Love being the starting quarterback. But you really look around the entire roster, there are a lot of young players who are now even – some of the unknown quantities in that linebacker room. I'm thinking of like Brenton Cox has been here now for 3 years. He had a couple of redshirt years. Feels like the roster flip from the 2021 team that ended up, they arguably were the best team in football until that Saturday night here in January when you couldn't do anything offensively after the Mercedes Lewis fumble. That flip has happened, and now it is building off a almost completely different core of Green Bay Packers.
Yeah, this is year 4 now since then, and I think that Brian Gutekunst has rebuilt this roster. I thought last year, and I remember saying this to you 2 years ago on the air, we were talking about, I thought the year 3 of this would be when the Packers would have their deepest team and a team ready to go and compete for the championship. Obviously, they had a team that maybe wasn't as deep as they had hoped. But the big factor that we just talked about a minute ago was the know-how factor, and that's the thing we didn't anticipate. They were so young, And so they were relatively inexperienced in terms of closing out games in the end, and that cost them last year. But make no bones about it, folks. This team was, despite the loss of Tucker Kraft in early November, Devontae Wyatt on Thanksgiving Day, they went to Denver coming off a win over the Bears at 9-3-1, and very easily could have had 11 wins.
Yes.
That loss at Cleveland, that tie at Dallas should have and could have gone different ways. And had they did. They'd have 11 wins going into that game. So this was a very good football team. And I think Brian Gutekunst, people say, well, he brought too many people. But no, I think he realizes, no, this is a good core. Now, do we need a little more? Yeah, and they added a little more in free agency. They added more in the draft. And now let's see where they go. And hopefully these guys who've been part of the youngest team of the league for 3 years are ready to be veterans.
And I also think, Wayne, where they had such a group of depth that, sometimes a great collection can be tough when you don't have one standout. And when you're trying to showcase everything in your collection, you got to point to 1, 2, or 3 things, and that'll grab the eye of a collector and fans. And I think, especially on the offensive side, you saw this year, they make the They made the selections as to who those guys are. On draft night, day number 2, while you and I were doing the show, they signed Jaden Reed to the 3-year contract. They signed Christian Watson a couple of months later to his new extension, and they soon will mint Tucker Kraft. I would assume he becomes the highest paid tight end in football before he comes off that PUP list and is able to hit the practice field here. And that is as great as, what Dontavian Wicks was at times, and Romeo Doubs played a lot of good football for this team. And 700
Especially
plus
late
yards
last year.
6 touchdowns, and he was big in the red zone. There were a lot of mouths to feed. And then last year, it felt like everybody was upset that, Matthew Golden didn't get a lot of touches. They almost consolidated, where maybe some of that consolidation can lead to bigger growth than what you had seen in some of those guys.
And people are worried, well, what about the depth beyond the big 3 in that receiving core? Well, Savion Williams was drafted for a reason where he was drafted, and they've got a lot of guys. This J. Michael Sturdivant that not many people have heard about. This is a kid who kind of stood out in the OTAs and minicamp. And with receivers and cornerbacks, the coverage people on the perimeter, you can see some things in those,
Big
walkthroughs
time.
in those practices like what we're seeing here today on the perimeter. What you can't see is how well a linebacker tackles, how well an offensive lineman blocks, that kind of thing. You don't see that then. But you see the perimeter people. You see the receivers run. You see the cornerbacks cover. You see the safeties. You can see the running backs even to an extent, although not quite as much. But you can see a lot. And that's the one thing. Sturdivant is one guy. And the other guy is Isaiah Nair, who they signed last season. He was on the practice squad. He played in that game at Minnesota, the meaningless end of the regular season game. Those are guys to kind of look at that could make a run at making this roster.
The Packers have been one of the longest-running teams in terms of keeping undrafted rookies, right? And they find ways for those guys to be on the field. Sturdivant would fit that mold. And looking at him right now in that 87 jersey, he definitely fits the part. Coming from Florida, he fills it out quite a bit. And we will also have talk and text line messages, 877-794-1973 on the NickLayLaw.com talk and text line. We'll be enjoying and relaying a number of the things that are happening here at Ray Nitschke Field as the Packers get ready for practice number 1, running through some different individual special teams drills in front of us now. Roll through for a team period coming up here in one quick second. You mentioned the running back room and the offensive line. That'll happen next week when we really get into pads. And Wayne, Monday and Tuesday, I am itching, and I cannot wait for those days in pads to figure out if that group, they were consistently inconsistent a year ago. And some of the inconsistencies were the players that were in and out. I mean, I remember a game in Arizona where Sean Ryan was mentioning after the game that he's like, well, I'm getting benched here in a contract year. Probably going to be gone. Probably going to have to go somewhere else. Then all of a sudden he starts the last 6 games for you at center and gets a 3-year contract. I think they have some players there, and especially Jordan Morgan in particular, Wayne, now taking over left tackle for Rasheed Walker, that they're excited about. But the proof is going to have to be in the games for, I think, fans to really get excited about a group that otherwise feels pretty similar to a one last year that was really up and down, and at times was good, but at times just made Josh Jacobs' life way too difficult.
You're right. And the one, I think, the risk here is that if you bring back this line intact, now, again, at the end of last year, you did not have Zach Tom. Jordan Morgan was not starting at the end of last year. Rasheed Walker was at left tackle. Aaron Banks had come on and played a little better in the second half of the season.
Welcome back to Training Camp Live. Let's go back to Ray Nitschke Field and rejoin the voice of the Packers, Wayne Larrivee, and Packers OT host Bill Schmid.
All right, folks, Armin Sarin here. Bear with us, having some technical issues from the perch at Ray Nitschke Field. Right now, we're going to go over to listen to Packers GM Brian Gutekunst as he joined the podium today for the opening of training camp.
Hope everybody had a good summer. As we start here, I just kind of want to take a minute. Thoughts and prayers going out to everybody in the Fox Cities with that tornado going through there. We have obviously a lot of friends. My kids go to school down there, so I know they're going through a lot. So, prayers for them. with that, I'll take some questions. All good?
Brian, I don't know what your offensive line will look like today, but if you had the same offensive line in week 17 that you had when you start camp, what would that be?
I think good. I'm not trying to remember who started in week 17, but no, I like our group. I like the depth of it. I think we'll get Aaron Banks back out there today. He'll do some stuff, so we'll come off PUP, which is good. And I really like that group. I've always talked about the versatility of that group. I think we got some guys in places this year that make a little bit more sense, and I think that continuity. Hopefully, if we can stay healthy, will benefit us moving forward.
I think I said after the season with Jordan Morgan at left tackle that you thought he did enough last preseason to win that job. Just kind of now that he's there, where's your confidence level at?
I thought he had a great spring. I mean, we're going into practice 1, so we got a lot of work to do as a team. So, but I got a lot of confidence in him. And I think hopefully keeping him in that one spot, will allow him to progress a little bit quicker. But he had a great spring, so we're excited about him.
Obviously, you're not going to get Parsons back for a while. You got a lot of young edge rushers.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to be competing and whatnot. What do you want to see from that group of guys as you perform?
Yeah, they were a lot of those guys did some really good things this spring, but we're not in pads, right? So, it's always tough to try to evaluate those guys when they're not in pads too much. So, as the pads come on and as we get into the physical part of it, just the consistency, kind of winning with bull rushes, kind of winning with power. But I'm pretty bullish on that group. I think it's there's enough guys in there. There's going to create some pretty good competition, and so yeah, I'm excited. We've put some resources into that over the last couple of drafts. So we got some young guys that I think are eager for their opportunities, and excited to see what they're going to be able to do this year.
Brian, in your time in Green Bay, not just as GM, how much has this time of year changed for you? It was 46 days until the first real game, but as we all know, sometimes those first few weeks of real football are still doing that process with how much starters play or don't play. Yeah, it's really changed from when I first started, and a lot of you guys were, back then too, where we had the 2 practices a day. Sometimes we had 2 padded days, we'd have one in the morning, we'd come back, watch the film, eat lunch, and get ready for the second practice. Come back that night, watch the film. We had less. I think we were at an 80-man roster at that time. We had smaller practice squads as we went into cut down. So it was a lot different. I'm the longer I do this, the more I just keep reminding myself of Ted. As far as like just getting with injuries, just trying to get through it healthy. But at the same time, understanding what you have to do to become a good football team and how important this time of year is. So it's changed quite a bit. I think certainly, science and technology have changed some things about how we go things. Obviously, the CBA rules have changed some things about how we go about it. But at the end of the day, there's still there's so much value in this time of year as coming together as a team, and it's extremely important. It really sets the tone for the entire season.
Brian, what's your hope for Tucker Kraft? And I know he keeps saying like he wants to be ready week 1. So is that a possibility?
Yeah, very much a possibility. In fact, I anticipate him being out there sooner rather than later. The more work he can get with Jordan, particularly even when maybe he's not ready for the team part of it, the more individual work he can get done with Jordan is going to be important for him as he heads into the season. So we've had a lot of discussions about that and the timing of that. And obviously we want to be protective. He's coming off a major injury, and he's still about that 8.5 month mark. But the way he looks, you think he's ready to go, because when you see him out there, it's a little bit like Christian. Those guys just they look really, really good early. But there's a lot of science behind the 9-month mark, and so we'll be very cautious as we head into it.
What's the urgency with him to try to reach an extension before the season begins?
Yeah, there's been discussions, and I think it's both us and him, it's in best interest to try to get something done. But these things take time, and we've gone through a bunch of a bunch of extensions this summer, kind of knowing this was going to be the one right about now. We have a little bit of time because he's just not there yet, but I would expect hopefully that would get done. But you never know how they're going to go.
Speaking of tight ends, Brian, what's your confidence that you've got someone who can fill that John Fitzpatrick blocking physicality kind of role?
Yeah, I think Josh did a really nice job for us in the opportunities he had last year, and I think certainly when Tuck gets back, he's going to handle a lot of Luke's dealing with something right now that was a little bit unexpected as we headed outside OTAs. So we'll kind of see how that goes. But there's a concern there from a depth perspective, just because we don't have a lot of guys that have played a lot of football there. So we'll kind of see, as training camp transpires, if we decide to do something there or not.
Is Micah checking all the boxes in his rehab? Is he kind of ready to schedule?
Yeah. I think, I may have mentioned it before, but he's a little bit of a genetic freak, so things come pretty easy to him. And he's still obviously got a long ways to go. These are major injuries. So as you go through these things, and how hard they have to work to get back, there's always going to be little setbacks here and there. But he's doing great right now.
Are you at a point with his recovery where are you leaving the door open that he might be on PUP sometime in camp, or are you kind of resigned to that?
Yeah, I wouldn't. I think I'd like to have enough flexibility to leave the door open, but that would be unlikely just from a timing perspective. We've invested a lot in him, so I think we want to make sure that he's ready to go before we even think about putting him out there.
Right, is it unusual to get as many extensions done as you did during the offseason? A lot of times you get a guy who wants to test free agency.
Yeah.
One way or the other. Was there circumstances just right? Or?
Yeah, Tom, I think it's a good question. I think you guys kind of probably, over the last year and a half or so, we had some pretty good draft classes in there where a lot of these guys really produced, and we had to make some decisions. And as we did that, I think we decided, obviously with the decisions we made, we wanted to lock these guys up early and let these guys grow together, particularly, on the offensive side of the ball with Christian and Jaden, obviously Jordan. Hopefully we can get Tucker done. Matthew's going to be here. He's under contract, obviously, for a few years. So if those guys can grow together, we think that's a really positive thing, the continuity of that. So I think we kind of went down the road this summer thinking this was what we wanted to do. You never know how that's going to go. And certainly I think when you do it a year early, it puts a little bit of risk on the club, and if you play it out, it puts a little bit of risk on the player. So I think, but I think all these deals were good deals for both.
That is Brian Gutekunst. This is Training Camp Live, presented by the Potawatomi Sportsbook. Bet big, bet bold, and bet above the rest. I'm Bill Schmid, voice of the Green Bay Packers. Wayne Larrivee with us here on the perch at Ray Nitschke Field. And Wayne, as we're hearing some Brian Gutekunst and taking a quick time out, we got to see Tyrod Taylor, pardon me, Baker Mayfield, Tyrod Taylor, number 6, working out for the Green Bay Packers.
By the way, that pronunciation has changed again. I've been told emphatically by Packers PR that is Tyrod Taylor.
Perfect. All
as
right,
it's always
right
been.
Time. Okay,
because there was a point, you're right, Billy, where at one point during this offseason it was Tyrod Taylor.
Yeah.
But it's Tyrod. That's what he wants.
Perfect. Apparently. Tyrod Taylor is at quarterback, and I wanted Tyrod Taylor
as
the backup quarterback.
That's how I've always known him for 16 years.
And Wayne, the other thing is, there's something to having a seasoned veteran quarterback that can, win you a couple of games. The Packers have had somebody they feel very confident in the last couple of years. Malik Willis is now the starting quarterback in the Miami Dolphins. You had to find someone, and hard to find anybody with more experience in the NFL than Tyrod Taylor.
Yeah, no question. I feel good about it. And I think that Goody invested in this position in a veteran, okay? And when you see a general manager do that, it's because he thinks he's got a team that is worth having that insurance policy for. Now, was Tyrod Taylor paid a huge amount of money? No, but they brought in a 16-year veteran instead of just saying, well, we'll go with one of the young guys we've got. We'll no, this team has a chance to win. If something happens to Jordan and he's out for a game or two, we need somebody who can hold the fort.
And too good to let, in all due respect to Kyle McCord and his family, putting Kyle McCord out there. Just too close and having too many opportunities. And for Jordan Love, I mean, I think we're a little bit past, Wayne, every single throw and series and drive being a damnation on Jordan's all-time ability as a starting quarterback. But I don't know that he's had the weapon of somebody with that kind of game experience on the sideline since he's been the starter, right? Like he got to hear everything possible that was going through the head of Aaron Rodgers when he was the backup. But now that he has somebody who has that kind of experience and those pelts on the wall in his ear, I think that can only be a positive for somebody still trying to grow.
I agree wholeheartedly with you, Billy. That's going to help a lot. Not only Jordan Love, who's now seasoned. I mean, he's going into his 4th year as a starter, 7th year overall in the league, I believe. But now you've got a guy, like you said, who can relate in that quarterback room. It's not so much what's going to happen on the sidelines game day, folks, although there certainly could be a positive impact there. But I think it's during the week as they plan the game plan, that kind of thing, practice, working out how they're going to approach something. There's a lot that a backup quarterback of experience can bring to the party.
One person that is not at the party, well, here, just currently not on the field party, is Keyshawn Nixon. Matt Schneidman of The Athletic reporting. Rookie second-round pick Brandon Cisse already getting his chance with the starting defense. Keyshawn Nixon out with a hamstring injury, and appears the Packers are easing Benjamin St. Juste in after he missed practice this offseason. Now, I don't know for certain of the St. Juste situation, but it feels like Cisse is maybe a tick above the other guys in that grouping, and that if he's getting any opportunities to be with the ones, that is a huge win for the second-round rookie.
Yeah, I think so, Billy. They're high on him. They loved him when they draft night. They liked what they saw in OTAs and minicamp. Now, the other cornerback they drafted out of Alabama, Damani Jackson, did not take part in the offseason drills. He was coming back from an injury, but we should get a look at him before too long here as well. He's right on the sidelines in front of us now. So, yeah, and I think with St. Juste, you kind of ease these guys back in. You do. You don't throw them out there all at once.
That was a position when GMs talk in the league, not that they lie, but a lot of times they might omit some of the truth. Wayne, is that a fair way of saying it? I think going into the draft, Goody had mentioned it. We're going to add to that room. We need to add to that room, and they did in a big way with their first pick in the 2026 draft, being Cisse. And he was a very willing and physical tackler at South Carolina. Feels like something they need in that room to be able to stop the run like they did earlier in the year a little better.
Bill, he was one of the better run-stopping cornerbacks in FBS football last year. So this is a kid, they're really high on him in a lot of respects. He's just turned 21 years old. They feel like they've got a good one here, and we'll see as he develops.
We just got a sweet run here by Josh Jacobs through the left side of the line, right at Lucas Van Ness. You want to talk about somebody who's got a lot of eyes on him. Now, the fifth-year option gets picked up, so contract-wise, not a big one. But anybody with a bigger runway and opportunity to make plays than Lucas Van Ness, I'd like to see it, because with Micah Parsons now on PUP officially, going to miss the beginning of the season, Wayne, the time is now, as Kevin Green said, for Lucas Van Ness. And I thought at times last year, before his injury, he showed some flashes of development that they were hoping to
I think so. And, Lucas had a great spring. By all accounts, he was in the offensive backfield every day, it seemed like. And again, they didn't have pads on. We're not putting a lot of stock in that, folks. But fact is, they were very happy with the offseason Lucas Van Ness had.
And a lot of opportunity with him, and everybody else is going to be in that defensive end room. Baron Sorrell working with the ones right now as Jordan Love hits. Matthew Golden, second-year wide receiver, number 0, not in the 22 that he was last year, Wayne, when he felt like he was making a big play a day. The oohs and ahs for Matthew Golden's speed are back here at Ray Nitschke.
Speed and quickness, and he runs the full route tree, folks, much like Christian Watson does. Both those guys would tell you their speed factor. Okay, these are guys who are going to bomb it downfield. They're going to beat people downfield. But really, both of them run the route tree very well, and I think that's a bonus for the Packers.
You don't take any too much into sets and different plays and things like that, but I would say one thing that was kind of missing consistently from the offense last year, whether it was the inconsistency in the run game and how much you trusted your offensive line, is the turnaround play action pass game. And that's what they've been working seemingly extensively on during this period. And that's where I think you really can take advantage of some of that speed across the field with Watson and Reed, but most importantly, Matthew Golden.
Yeah, I think so too. No doubt in my mind about that. I'm anxious to see also in this preseason, I think we're going to see a lot of him, Savion Williams. This is a big camp for him. I understand it's only his second year, but still, this is a guy they feel like could develop into a third or fourth receiver on this tree, and that would be interesting to see. I think the only position he could aspire to this year might be fourth receiver, because you've got three guys at the top there that are going to be hard to displace.
Well, and our friend and producer and one of your producers on the Packer Game Day broadcast, Starman Sarian, is hoping that it's not just Savion Williams on the A-gap runs. Because that did feel like there was a lot of times that he became the jet sweep guy out of that spot. Jaden Reed going to get a lot of those jet sweeps. Jaden Reed I'm very excited about, not only the contract extension, but the runway of him being healthy going into a year. Last year, the collarbone injury is one thing. A man had a Jones fracture before that, played a game and a half with it, and they pay him. And I think, Wayne, again, if indeed the number he plays to the numbers I believe he can put up and has earlier on in his career, I think he's going to outseed that payday that he ended up getting this offseason.
Yeah, I think so, too. And I think Christian Watson's another guy. They decided to pay him early. They took a gamble for the team. Okay, we're going to take care of him. And a lot of people think that, what has he done so far? He's been injured a lot, and that's true. But nonetheless, what they saw they liked, they signed him to a contract. Billy, if he's healthy and he plays like a number one receiver, the contract is a bargain.
Oh, big time. And when you look at the other guys in the league that signed around that number, Alec Pierce's numbers are very good. Yeah, 1,000-yard receiver. But the reason why his number was what it was, because he hit free agency. You don't want your guys to hit it, especially at that position. And there's a couple other players here on the offense that are getting some run. Tucker Kraft is over at the rehab group as he's on the PUP list. But Josh Wiley was a welcomed sight a year ago. And Luke Musgrave also on PUP, so he's not going to be a part of this. Good reps here for number 81 as he tries to make a run at that second tight end spot.
Absolutely. And he has an opportunity, Josh Wiley. There's no question. They like him. They like what he brings to the party. He was signed to the active roster on November 4th. And this is a guy they feel like they can trust. I'm not sure he's the greatest inline blocker, but he's a decent blocker, willing blocker in line. And, they feel like he also has an ability downfield with his hands.
He's a big son of a gun.
He's good size.
6'7", 250. That's a stout size for a tight end, an NFL guy, no doubt about it. And one other player that I know every eye here in camp is going to be on, as the aforementioned Josh Wiley takes a rip over the middle, almost hauls in a great play, but right there on the coverage, sticky is number 33, Evan Williams. What about 32, Marshawn Lloyd? He had a screen pass there earlier on, running a little bit with the ones. I made a joke earlier on today on the huddle, Wayne, and sometimes my jokes are not necessarily hit with the kind of laugh track that maybe it should have, or the sarcasm font doesn't come through very well. But there was right out of the gates an ooh when Marshawn Lloyd hits the field. Man, the talent is really evident with 32. I joked about it, though, earlier today. The biggest question, the biggest eyes that the thing that I want to watch is him get up off the ground after the first time he hits it, because his health is the only thing that feels like it's holding 32 back.
He could be a great situation back, change of pace back, that kind of thing. He's got explosive ability that not all the backs have, obviously. And that's why the Packers have been patient 2 years now. Yeah. Okay, and this is going into year 3. But, he came through the OTAs and minicamp well. They are kind of, I think they're not saying it, but he's kind of on a pitch count, Billy. Mm-hmm. They don't want to wear him out here. They want him to make sure he's healthy going into the regular season. I think he will be. I think he did a lot of work back in California to get ready for this moment. And hopefully his injuries are behind him. You never know. But they're going to also, I keep thinking that when you were talking about him, the Ted Thompson bubble wrap factor, Yeah,
at some point,
let's put this kid around, bubble wrap around him. Make sure we get him to September.
Yeah, and let's just make sure he's ready for week 1, because there's some clear and obvious carries available there and some questions as well. Josh Jacobs is at practice. He is out there running around in the number 8 jersey. He's had a couple of rushes as well. And that one is, as much as it's been a difficult year, business as usual. Isaiah Naylor with a great catch there in the corner.
Great catch and toe tap in the right corner of the end zone at the pylon, back line. They've got some interesting wide receivers beyond the 4 that we have talked prominently about this morning. That, again, he's one of them. Isaiah Naylor. When I look at J. Michael Sturdivant, Will Shepard is a kid who's been around for a little bit now, and he's a guy who could show up. Brendan Rice is the son of Hall of Famer Jerry Rice. Brendan 6'2", looks the part. We'll see how well he can play. But he's a kid who's knocked around camps before, so he's not going to embarrass himself at all.
Well, and that is interesting when you find players that, like Nair, who was here a year ago on the practice squad, in and out and waiting for an opportunity. That's one thing they definitely cleared up in the receiving room. Our chances for young guys to be able to splash. We know who the core 3 and 4 will be, but there is definitely a room there. And at 6'4", 220, you look the part. And playing the Big Ten at Nebraska, make catches like that. It's going to be hard to not have some eyes on you. It's training camp live here from the perch at Ray Nitschke Field. The voice of the Green Bay Packers, Wayne Larrivee. I'm Billy Schmid. Team period breaks up and now into an individual drill and a little bit of a slowdown. We'll take a quick timeout and come right back with more action live from Ray Nitschke Field. Packers on the practice field for the first time in the 2026. I'm going with the championship season. And a wave from Micah Parsons right as that happens. The crowd loves to see that as the man dressed in all black. We're patiently awaiting his arrival back to the playing surface. But just Micah Parsons walking around and got a big pop here, Wayne.
Yeah, it did.
I'm stunned. Micah Parsons got a big celebratory wave from the fans, and he just popped this place up a little bit as well. We'll be back. The voice of the Green Bay Packers, Wayne Larrivee. I'm Billy Schmid. It's day 1 of 2026 Packers training camp. It's Training Camp Live on Fox Sports Radio, Wisconsin.
We're live at Packers training camp in Green Bay, bringing you closer to the action than anyone else.
I think this year he's looked very good at camp.
Camp coverage on Fox Sports Radio Wisconsin is presented by Potawatomi Sportsbook. Now back to Training Camp Live with the voice of the Packers, Wayne Larrivee. Here is Packers OT host, Bill Schmid.
It is presented by the Potawatomi Sportsbook. Welcome back to Ray Nitschke Field in Green Bay, Wisconsin, as Training Camp Live continues here on Fox Sports Radio Wisconsin. He's the voice of the Green Bay Packers, Wayne Larrivee. I'm Billy Schmid of Packers OT. We'll talk to you post-game. He'll give you all the highlights of the game, and we're giving you some highlights of practice number 1, albeit, Wayne, in shorts and helmets. Some little flashes of excitement here early, but now you start to wonder and wait, and this continues to grow longer. You had a great line of it early that you can't wait to get here, and then you turn the page in that middle of like the first quarter of the preseason game number 1, and you can't wait for the regular season to start. There is so much excitement and anticipation. However, feels like almost more unknowns when you talk about the Green Bay Packers with people around the streets right now.
You know what's beautiful about the NFL is, let's go back 1 year ago. Was anyone talking about Seattle or New England? Nobody was talking about those teams, probably not even in their markets. And yet they eventually emerge and play in the Super Bowl. So the Packers are one of those teams who could evolve into a Super Bowl team. You know, there are probably about 20 that realistically have the roster, have the quarterback in place that could evolve into a Super Bowl team. About 20 teams. The Packers are one of them. Now, do the Packers need more to go right for them than the Los Angeles Rams or the Seattle Seahawks now or the Denver Broncos? Yes, they need more to go right. But they do have enough personnel, and they do have the quarterback that could get them there.
I think the quarterback is the one that's most important.
That's a big factor.
Right? It's got to be the confidence that Jordan exudes and the team and franchise has in him. Just year in and year out, it takes another step. And Wayne, it sounds really simple, and I joked about it with our friend Aaron Nagler on our podcast last week. He's asking, who do you need more out of? Well, I'll tell you who the Packers do. They need a little bit more out of Jordan Love. Doesn't mean that he has been bad to any degree. Doesn't mean that he is further along or less than other guys. But this league requires that position to be excellent when it matters most. And there were times last year, especially in the middle of the year, when you didn't have Tucker Kraft right away. You were still working Christian Watson back. That the consistency week in and week out of being one of those high-level players, I still think there's room to grow there, but the highs have still been really, really good, and seems like there's more confidence you're going to get a lot more out of that from 10.
The word I keep hearing around the league when it comes to the Packers and the quarterback situation is kind of what you just mentioned. They need to put more into Jordan Love.
Yeah.
I mean, in other words, rely on him a little bit more. Now, what you have to understand, even last year with an offensive line that was struggling, with a running back who got banged up by the second half of the season, the Packers averaged almost 29 rushing attempts per game. That was 6th in the NFL. Now, they only produced 119.8 yards. But what I'm saying is that a lot of the play calling, this offense is built around the running game, but, pretty heavy emphasis on the running game here. And meanwhile, the passing game, I don't think took a back seat. I wouldn't say that. But I guess what you're saying is run the ball a little less, throw it a little more. That puts more onto Jordan Love's plate. And that's what a lot of people who observe the Packers from the outside say. We'll see how that all evolves.
It might sound wrong. It almost feels like they need to be a little bit more selfish in the pass game from the standpoint of, I think Jordan has done an excellent job of continuing to know the right look to move the play to a run play and what the right play is to move it to a pass play. We got spoiled watching somebody say, yeah, this is definitely a run look. You know what also is a good look? Throw the ball to Devontae Adams every time.
Yeah.
and be able to force feed some of those to your top playmakers. I think a lot more of their top playmakers, Wayne, are on the outside, and it might be a chance for you to, numbers are never going to not get looked at when you talk about awards and accolades and things like that. But those ways of being able to steal big, quick completions and consistently putting more points on the board, I think that's one where he could almost be a little bit more selfish.
Yeah, maybe. And maybe they will be. We'll have to see how it all works out, the offensive line, everything else. But, I said this before. I think Jordan Love is certainly a top 10 quarterback, maybe in some respects a top 5 quarterback. But it'll be interesting to see how much they invest in the passing game this year, because in the last 2 years, and rightfully so, they've been heavily invested in the ground game. You run the ball almost 30 times a game. Okay, how many times are you throwing it?
Yeah.
Not as many times as, let's say, some of the other teams who are coming from behind.
And there's something to be said for playing your style of ball. Packers were rather rigid in it, I think, a year ago, even when, maybe the offensive flow wasn't tremendous, continuing to try to lean in on what they did. Maybe some of those adjustments happened mid-game. Who knows? One adjustment to the roster that was made in the offseason, there wasn't a ton. But Wayne, one guy out, now 2 in, including our friend Lenny Craig in the kicking department. We see Trey Smack out there in the 28 jersey, 6th-round pick as the Florida Gator lines up. Now, won't be kicking because the full operation is not locked in. Matt Orzik not practicing the long snapper. But, Wayne, I love doing these shows is one of the most enjoyable things of this job. One of the least enjoyable things for me is talking about kickers all the time. So hopefully we can solidify it with number 28 because they like a lot about what Trey Smack brings to the table.
Yeah, they certainly do. They let Brandon McManus go. They've let Lucas Haversack go. The kicker they brought in, Krieg, is from Germany, I believe, and he's a guy who could potentially be their pathway player, if they needed to keep a roster spot for him on the practice squad. So they've got some options here, but, Trey Smack, obviously they feel like they traded 2 draft picks to move up into the 6th round and get him. I understand there were 2 7th-round draft picks in on a bad day 3 of the draft, but nonetheless, they did invest in him, and they are bound and determined to make sure he has a pathway, so to speak, to the kicking job.
Yeah, and you want to make sure that guy's on the roster. You want to make sure that he's got a chance. I'm excited to see the growth there because to say that Brandon McManus was awful, I think is unfair to what he put together. But you leave 7 points on the scoreboard in a playoff game, Wayne. It's going to be hard to return anywhere.
Mason Crosby was in. He was the kicker here for many years. Why? Because he was consistent. And the other thing he had was a penchant for making the big kick at the right time.
Amen.
And, so since then, Brian Gutekunst mentioned this morning. I haven't looked it up. He said it. He said, actually during the regular season, since Mason Crosby, we've been a little more we've had a little better percentage. And I imagine it's a real small percentage. But where they haven't been as good is in the postseason. And those big kicks you just can't miss. And they've missed them.
Yeah, in this sport, it's always going to come down to a couple of swings of the right leg. Now, maybe the left. Most of these guys are right-footed. So most of it's swing of the right leg, and you can be real close to one of the teams that's been chasing you for a long time. You don't put points on the board when you have a chance, and all of a sudden now you no longer have a chance to advance. There's a lot of times that I've spent during the offseason, Wayne, thinking about that last Saturday night in Chicago. And those kicks are ones that are difficult to get past, especially the last one, because it felt like that last field goal was missed before you even put boot to foot.
It was amazing. I honestly thought the way he missed it, I thought, did somebody get a piece of that?
It felt like it had to have been blocked. I'm with you on that.
Yeah, it just was tough. But, hey, and you're going to put a rookie out there. We've seen that a couple of years ago, and, it's not easy. It's not an easy position to fill.
No, Cam Acord going to be tasked with figuring out who is going to be his new kicker. Number 1 is the new special teams man in Green Bay. Back to a team period inside the 10-yard line in front of us as the Packers take the field, and Jordan Love moves Jacobs to his left and then just fires it right over to number 8. Too low for the intended target, but Josh Jacobs out there. It's a good thing to see, Wayne, not only just for the offseason that he had. Last year physically, Jacobs dealt with a ton of injuries, and he's not going to be one to discuss them, not going to be one to ever really sit out. But you could tell it definitely hampered him throughout the year.
Yeah, it did. They got him healthy late. He had a couple of good runs in Chicago in the playoff game, but you're right, he was banged up. And the offensive line wasn't nearly good enough last year in the running game. I didn't think. There were too many situations where Josh got hit early behind the line of scrimmage before he could really get going.
Like to see Messiah Swinson getting a little bit of run here with the first team at the tight end spot, and pass breakup in the back by Evan Williams.
Swinson's a guy who has a chance. Why, Billy? Because he's a big inline blocker.
Huge, yes. And they're going to need guys there at that tight end spot, right? I mean, I think when you look at rosters, a lot of times you'll keep 4. Once Kraft went out last year, it is absolutely a statement of how good and productive Tucker Kraft was. But they just did not find anyone consistently that was able to hold that position down and give them something.
You're right. I mean, Luke Musgrave gave them some things, but not the complete package, and they struggled with that. Josh Wiley came in and gave them at least some stability at times late in the season.
Swinson at least gives you a get off the bus guy. And, high school football coaches that are listening to us understand that's an important thing. You got to find somebody to get off the bus first. I'll tell you that much. Swinson's getting off the bus first for me. I got a couple of cats that are. One, Brenton Cox, is going to be getting off the bus pretty quickly as well, as number 57 is running around there with the first team on the defense as well. We've run through our 1 of day 1 on the practice field here at Ray Nitschke Field. 1 more to go. He's the voice of the Green Bay Packers, Wayne Larrivee. I'm Billy Schmid. It's Training Camp Live, presented by the Potawatomi Sportsbook. Become a legend. Bet big, bet bold, and bet above the rest. Over at Potawatomi Casino Hotel, the Potawatomi Sportsbook, official sportsbook partner of the Green Bay Packers. We're back after this with hour 2 from Ray Nitschke Field. It's Fox Sports Radio, Wisconsin.
Football season is here.
Shotgun snap to Lovey, bobbles for a moment, now lost it. Right side of the end zone, Watson, leaping grab. Oh, sensational touchdown catch.
Packers training camp is underway in Green Bay, and nobody is bringing you closer to the action than us.
We are enjoying some special teams work, some individual drills right now for the offense and defensive linemen, DBs in front of us.
All of the storylines, all of the emerging stars, and all of the big plays out of camp. Analyzed by two guys who know Packers football inside and out.
Quarterbacks at this time of year, veteran quarterbacks especially, they'll be trying throws here that they wouldn't try elsewhere.
Training camp coverage on Fox Sports Radio Wisconsin is presented by Potawatomi Sportsbook. Now, live from the perch above Ray Nitschke Field, with the voice of the Packers, Wayne Larrivee.
And the Packers deliver the dagger.
Here is Packers OT host, Bill Schmid.
It is day one of the 2026 season for the Green Bay Packers, and plays like the one that Marlon Jones just made, hopefully going to be a part of the regular season action. I'm Bill Schmid, Wayne Larrivee, voice of the Green Bay Packers, next to me, and it was Marlon Jones with maybe one of the plays of the day, Wayne, a pick six that got the stands blown up for a defensive play. Rarely that happens here at training camp.
Marlon Jones, number 46, rookie free agent out of Vanderbilt, was not drafted, went unsigned until the Packers called after two players they intended to sign failed to pass their physicals. Now, what the story on Marlon Jones is, he came back last year, returned to play in 9 games last year. He missed the previous season while battling stage 3 lymphoma. And was told he'd never play football again by the doctors. Well, that's not the case. He came back, played last year at Vandy, and now is trying to make the Green Bay Packers. Made a big play down here, right on the goal line. Beautiful break on the ball, and would have taken it all the way.
Would have taken it all the way, ran it all the way down, and the reaction from the Packers defensive sideline was awesome to see. And when you're only in the building and in the organization for a couple of months, not everybody is going to get that kind of reaction. That story will draw some. And the Packers have made a living in the last 2 decades, Wayne, finding undrafted rookies that are going to make the football team. I'm not saying one play does it, but there's always a job available here that you might not think is available come the end of cutdowns.
Yeah, that's the nature of the game itself. And you don't know how these rosters are going to evolve, who's going to stay healthy, who isn't, that kind of thing. So, Brian Gutekunst was talking this morning about roster building. It's a year-round activity, and teams constantly change. I mean, what the Packers have now is probably not what they're going to have going into the opener. And by the week 8, it could be a much different looking team by then. Either evolving or maybe they've lost personnel for injury, that kind of thing. So it's a constant, and, you ride those waves.
Practice wrapping up here for day number 1, a quick one, in and out with about an hour or so. Was expected to go maybe a tick longer, but a good one to end on. And Wayne, some more of the highlights that we had here today as they break up and the offense and defense separate was defensively Zaire Franklin, who they trade Colby Wooden for in the offseason from the Colts. Mentioned earlier in hour number 1, he's going to be a green dot guy. He's going to call the defense and coordinate everything. Makes a great break, strips Marshawn Lloyd on a catch out to the right, and 44 making splash plays like that. They're going to need somebody alongside Edgerrin Cooper to hopefully unlock him. But Zaire Franklin was a Pro Bowler in his own right and an All-Pro at one time.
He was All-Pro 2 years ago. Didn't have quite as good a season with Indianapolis last year. But then, again, and a lot of these things, well, he didn't have the great season last year. Well, a lot of that could have been, this is football. There are 11 guys out there with you, and, the people around you have to play well, too, for you to reach your full potential. And maybe that didn't happen at Indianapolis last year. They kind of struggled. But nonetheless, I think he's a great addition to this football team here. And you're exactly right, Billy. Really quick practice here today to get things underway.
We were expecting to have some more plays to be able to discuss here into hour number 2, but we get to recap what we all saw and what we heard in day number 1, and a couple other guys that you ended up seeing a little bit more of than you would have anticipated. Evan Williams, in the back end, their safety spot, Wayne, the last number of years has felt like there's been one or both of those jobs available. They solidified Xavier McKinney by signing him in free agency a couple of years ago. I don't know that on day number 3, when they grabbed Evan Williams in the 4th round, they could have thought that they solidified it as much as they have, because it feels like you got a real player there, and he had a couple of good plays here today as well.
One of those players on defense that I think can really emerge and has a chance to be a star. We've talked in ad nauseum about Edgerrin Cooper, but Evan Williams is one of those guys. Javon Bullard, all he has to do is start making takeaways.
Yes.
And that's the one component of his game that there's room to grow. And he's another guy who could be a star. Obviously, they've got McKinney. The cornerback situation bears watching. Lucas Van Ness has to become a player. I'm not saying a superstar, but a player on that defensive front. I think Devontae Wyatt's a guy who could be one of those standout players, one of those blue chip players, if he can stay healthy and continue to play. And obviously they have Micah Parsons. So they have potentially, and it's just potential, star power on all three levels of this defense, but that star level has to be reached.
Yeah, it does. And Wayne, I think some people think it's a little bit cliche and obvious, but I think at each level you need a Pro Bowl, all-pro caliber player. Does that guy have to make it each and every year for you to be able to win? No, but teams need to also respect that guy when you're game planning. And I think that's another part of it, where a name of Zaire Franklin, there have been a lot of offensive coordinators that have called plays knowing he's in the middle of defenses and give him a certain level of respect. I think that's another part of it. It's not only just how you play on a day in and day out basis, but the kind of attention you garner in the week leading up to the game.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. And that's what a blue chip player is. He garners attention in the preparation of the game plan by the opponent. So this is a team that has a lot of players that are kind of on the cusp here, that if they pan out, this team can go places. And the only way we're going to find out starts in September, not down here. We'll see where guys make the roster. The training camp is about making the roster. And once the roster is set, then the team really comes together.
Totally.
Now, is there some team building going on at training camp? Of course there is. But really, the unit becomes a team when the roster is set. The 53-man roster is set. That's when they come together.
And Wayne, as you look at it, we'll talk about that beginning of the schedule, because I think it plays out about as well as it could for the Packers with the injuries that they have and the players that they're going to be missing early on. You go to Minnesota and you go to the New York Jets. The Vikings are one of the more fascinating squads in 2026, because they could go one of two ways. They could quickly, I think, ascend back to one of the contenders in the NFC with Kyler Murray. If they get, adequate quarterback play, I think is putting it fairly. Above average quarterback play, they could be downright scary, because they have still some of the better skill position players in the league, definitely in the division. That's one game where you'll hear a lot of unscouted look conversation, I assume, on the grass, the unscouted looks. Some of those classics will get brought back. But it's real when you talk about the Vikings, what you're going to see there week one.
Billy, and people kind of get annoyed at me for saying this, but they were one player away from probably blowing open the division last year. They were one player away from maybe winning 14 or 15 games. And what won the division? I think 11 wins with the Bears.
Mm-hmm.
They were that good around them, and they are so well coached on both sides of the football and even special teams. But they have, you're right, the skilled people around the quarterback position. What they didn't have was the quarterback.
Yeah.
Can Kyler Murray give them that? He can do a lot of things. He can probably put up some really good numbers. But the problem with Kyler Murray has always been he gets you to a certain point, and then he gets you beat.
Yes.
That's why he's no longer in Arizona, boys and girls. Let me tell you, that's why. And so, this will be interesting to see if he emerges from that quarterback battle. We don't know. Maybe it'll be J.J. McCarthy. And if it is, J.J. will be a much different player than he was a year ago. Otherwise, he won't emerge.
Yeah, otherwise he won't win the job. I heard your cohort, Paul Allen, say it one time about Kyler Murray. Now, before Kyler Murray was the quarterback of the Vikings, so maybe it's a much different tone that he has with it. But he said, Kyler throws punts. And you see it every once in a while. There's a ball that goes way up in the air that is either my guy's going to come down with it or your guy's going to come down with it. Yeah. It's going to get caught at some point, and it's going to be a problem for one of us. But there's been that moment in a game for him pretty much his entire career.
Yeah.
And we'll see if Kevin O'Connell can kind of coach that out of him. But, 2 years ago they had Sam Darnold, and they had 60 minutes to decide if they were the number 1 overall seed, and 8 days later, they knew they didn't want Sam Darnold again. That's a crazy turnaround.
And then Sam Darnold goes to Seattle and wins a Super Bowl.
Man.
So go figure, folks. We're just speculating on what might happen. Yeah, who knows what's going to happen? That's the thing. We don't know what's going to happen here. But they started training camp, and they're seeing players out there, and it's great. And, as they get a little healthier, get some of the guys back out there. And none of these injuries that they've got guys on the PUP list for are injuries that at least I know of, that are going to keep somebody out for the season.
Right.
Nothing like that. These guys will get they'll get filtered into camp as we go along here.
And the Micah Parsons injury, the one that everybody's still talking about, he'll miss most likely at least the first 4 games. They'll have to get he'll be on PUP if he reaches the start of the season, then miss the first 4 games and potentially a little bit more there as well. Then you're home against the Falcons, at the Buccaneers before that Week 5 game against the Bears, where everyone kind of had circled where you'd return. Obviously, there's going to be a bunch of juice for that Bears-Packers game. Probably has more juice now than it has, and I couldn't even remember one outside of the playoff game a year ago, because both teams are expecting to take another leap forward. I know there's some regression police out there with the Chicago Bears. I'm looking at our producer, Armin Sarian, who believes they're destined for a down cycle. But those are going to be tough, competitive games. And the physicality, Wayne, is one that you just can't really forget about in January, because that's where that game really flipped in the second half.
I thought so in the second half, and give them a lot of credit. Dennis Allen, the defensive coordinator, made some adjustments, started bringing pressure, and the Packers' offensive line wasn't able to quite respond to that. Although, again, the Bears closed in, and remember that touchdown pass to Golden gave the Packers what seemed like another comfortable lead.
Yeah.
But the defense wasn't able to hold up down the stretch, and that was a big part of it. But still, despite all that, they're driving late in the ball game. The Packers I'm talking about, they're in Chicago territory. There's that pass to Jaden Reed that Jay Reed will tell you he probably nightmared about that all the offseason. He dropped it. They complete that pass. Maybe they score on that play. If not, they probably score right after. And they win the ball game. And the whole narrative. I mean, I see all these publications that rank Caleb Williams ahead of Jordan Love and all this other stuff. The whole thing flips if the Packers win that game. Matter of fact, if Romeo Doubs catches an onside kick in the regular season game in Chicago, the Packers probably host that playoff game.
Yeah, and Wayne, maybe even more, because maybe you don't end up losing the next week in the fashion you did, right? That was the Baltimore game where it almost felt like they got run off the field by Derrick Henry and the Falcons, and the Ravens, pardon me. It catches up in not being able to slow that negative momentum, the avalanche against you. That's where I think the maturity of a football team will really show up, and needs to with this one. Looking at the rest of the division, and this Training Camp Live is presented by the Potawatomi Sportsbook. At the Potawatomi Sportsbook right now, the Lions are the odds-on favorite to win the division. Does that surprise you at all, Wayne?
No, because they have an excellent roster still. Now, they've lost some pieces. Their offensive line isn't quite what it was. But they still have those skill position people on offense. Jared Goff, no one talks about him. All he does is put up gaudy numbers. Yep. I mean, they're gaudy. He's been tremendous for them. I still think they're well coached. Dan Campbell is going to get that offense straightened out. Jahmyr Gibbs gives them a dimension that not many teams have.
That's fair.
I think they are a football team nobody's talking about because they kind of struggled with the injuries last year. But here's the thing. What makes you think the Detroit Lions are going to be healthy? Have they been healthy the last 2 years? No, they haven't.
No, they have not.
And I will go to my grave saying this. Playing on that surface in Detroit, that's treacherous.
That's a problem. Yeah,
it is a problem. A lot of teams, I know every time the Packers go in there, they lose somebody of significance on that field. And the Lions lose a lot of players over the years, the last 2 years especially. So it'll be interesting to see. But, yeah, I can understand that. I can see that. With the Bears, what would worry me is they won a lot of games late, down the stretch. Give the quarterback all the credit in the world, and he's a big play quarterback. Quarter 1 through quarter 3, Caleb Williams can be pretty pedestrian.
Yeah,
miss a lot of throws.
Yes.
But boy, in that fourth quarter, when the game's on the line, he makes plays. There's something to be said for that. That's a great trait to have. But they also led the universe in takeaways.
That's for sure.
And we know this, Billy. I know football people cringe at this. You can coach takeaways all you want. Oh, the Peanut Tillman thing. And what was the hue and cry here a year ago? Ball king. We're going to take the ball away.
King.
Yeah,
that
they
was
couldn't
it. Yes.
buy a fumble for the first 6 weeks of the season, of the regular season. Takeaways, turnovers are the residue of luck as much as they are as planning.
Yeah.
Some years you get a lot, some years don't. Packers had 31 takeaways in Jeff Hafley's first year as defensive coordinator. Everyone had they did a tremendous job. He's on the hot wire to be a head coach. Yeah. The next year, they had 14.
Mm-hmm.
If the Bears, who had 30, I believe, last year, 38 takeaways, if they get half that many this year, that'll be a lot.
That's a huge number for them, no doubt. Because they not only just lose a significant amount of them in the players that walk out the door, but ask Xavier McKinney how sticky that football is a year after you get 8 of them, right?
Yeah.
It's a totally different game, and you can believe that you have them locked in, but you can't necessarily count on that on a week in and week out basis. And when that's the way that you play defense, that's going to be a tough way to make a living in the NFL. And I think, as we've seen and discussed a couple of times here, Packers are going to have just as good of a chance as anybody else in this division to not only make significant noise, but be able to win a lot of these divisional games. They haven't won the division since 2021, and I know that this is that's not a benchmark, but that's the first checkpoint to get to here in the 2026 season, is hosting a playoff game and winning the division again.
Yeah, and that playoff game, hosting that playoff game is so important. I know the Packers have had some great teams, and I think 2021 was maybe Matt LaFleur's best team. They had it all going for them. They had the bye. They were the number 1 seed. They host a playoff game, and they lose on special teams plays to San Francisco that year. And that was kind of the beginning of the end of the Aaron Rodgers era in Green Bay. That was it.
We have talk and text line message from Justin in Jacksonville. Is Nixon not practicing because he's unhappy with his contract and using his hammy as an excuse? Well, that only Keyshawn Nixon could be able to divulge. I don't necessarily know that that's the case. I do know that he wanted a new contract in the offseason, and that adjustment, there has not been an adjustment to it. I also don't know that it would be exactly the hill that I would die on, knowing that I got a lot of opportunities. I believe he's hurt. I believe that there's a hamstring injury. We'll allow somebody to prove us the other way. But for Nixon in particular, I don't know that, you want to make as much money as possible. You also want to make sure that you're making as many plays as possible, and you're not just going to willingly give up chances to be on the grass.
I would think if he and his agent were going to hold out, they would have done it during OTAs and minicamp, wouldn't they? Or maybe not minicamp because you can get fined, but OTAs. I mean, why was he here for all the OTAs? I think Keyshawn's going to play, and I think he'll be fine whether he gets a contract or not. He'll go out. The mentality is a great mentality. That kid, his mentality would be, well, I'll show these guys. By the way, I'm going to have a great year. Mm-hmm. I'm going to play like a number 1 cornerback, and they won't be able to sign me. Well, yeah. I mean, if he does that, I think the Packers would be pretty happy, wouldn't they be?
Oh,
he plays like a number 1 cornerback.
Oh, they won't be able to contain the excitement if he doesn't shows them. There's a lot of variables, but the one is the improvement from within. They've got a lot of opportunity for improvement from within. In that second spots here for training camp live, practice number 1 wrapping up, and everybody now saying hello to the family and then rolling over onto the other side for the first day of film. There's always we mentioned Ted Thompson's name a couple of times here, Wayne. There's always a hope that nobody gets dinged here today on day number 1, the first couple of days. Offensive line-wise last year, it couldn't have started worse for Aaron Banks. He first day in pads ends up with a back injury.
Yeah.
There's room to improve on that, but I go back to something you said that just continues to ring in my mind. You never get healthier in the NFL. It's not a place that you necessarily get healthier and more durable. Is any bit of that coached or prepared for, or is some of it just dumb luck that rolls through in an NFL season? I know people don't like using the word luck in pro sports, but I hate to break it to them. It's a huge part of it.
It's a huge part of it. And injuries are luck.
Yeah.
Okay. Because these guys, folks, it's not like these guys don't come in condition. All right. The only thing a player can do is get his body right for what he's about to face. That's all a player can do in any pro sport. And these guys do that. There's nobody who shows up here out of shape. Do they Some guys, they want to get in better shape, maybe, but everybody's in shape
to
do this. And so injuries, a lot of it's luck. And then I've always believed this, Billy, and I don't blame players for injuries, but there are some guys who, no matter how well they're built, how diligent they are at their craft and getting their bodies ready, that injuries happen, and they just seem to happen to certain guys often more and more and more. And you're exactly right. The more you play in the NFL, you don't get healthier. You get it's a 100% injury business. That's why I hate to see teams bring in draft players or bring in players. This guy's banged up in college, and so but this is not a spa we're bringing him into here. Okay,
this isn't gonna be
if
better
he's banged up in college, what do you think he's going to be in the NFL?
17 games last I checked. Going to be harder to play than 12 if you can't make it through that schedule.
Yeah.
It's a difficult spot because you have so many options, but you need to be able to whittle it down. More importantly, you need your best players to be available. It wasn't just the quantity of injuries; it was the quality of the injuries that the Packers ended up suffering a year ago. One guy that was dinged up a year ago, we saw make a couple of plays here. Christian Watson, newly minted with that contract. Big year for number 9 because if he produces the way, Wayne, you saw at the back end of the year, this is when number 9 becomes the number 1 receiver.
Yep.
It couldn't have been more true. And I'm glad, though, that we're not having the conversation this year of, you don't need a number 1 receiver. They now have identified their number 1 receiver. Now they need him to perform like a number 1 receiver.
Exactly. I think Matthew Golden has a wealth of talent. He can be like their Jordan Addison. Jordan Addison to Jefferson up in Minnesota. I mean, that's what they're hoping these guys can be. And then you've got Jaden Reed, and he's led the team in receptions in his first 2 years in the league. And the only reason he probably didn't last year was because he was injured most of the year. But so they've got people. They've got skilled people. I'm not worried about that at all. If the offensive line holds up and it comes together, which I think it will, this offense is going to be fine, Billy. The question will be on defense. And, how do you hold up there? Can you stop the run? Can you put pressure on the quarterback? And can you cover? Big question. Can you cover?
And when the money's on the table, can you cover? Because that's it. When the money's on the table in the fourth quarter, are you able to close out these games? So we close out day number 1 here from Packers practice. We'll wrap things up here on the other side. We'll hear maybe a little bit more from Brian Gutekunst as well. Early end to practice number 1, but the start of 2026 Packers football is here. You got the voice of the Green Bay Packers, Wayne Larrivee. I'm Billy Schmid, presented by the Potawatomi Sportsbook. It's Training Camp live on Fox Sports Radio, Wisconsin.
We're live at Packers training camp in Green Bay, bringing you closer to the action than anyone else.
I think this year he's looked very good in camp.
Camp coverage on Fox Sports Radio Wisconsin is presented by Potawatomi Sportsbook. Now back to Training Camp Live with the voice of the Packers, Wayne Larrivee. Here is Packers OT host, Bill Schmid.
Presented by the Potawatomi Sportsbook. Training Camp Live. Day number 1 is wrapped up here from Ray Nitschke Field. A couple of big plays being made. Marlon Jones, maybe the biggest, a rookie from Vanderbilt, undrafted rookie. Zaire Franklin stripping Marshawn Lloyd near the goal line. And as we find Ziggy Smalls on Twitter, one Zaire Franklin, he is a very interesting piece for the Green Bay Packers here in 2026. Going to be the green dot guy for the defense, going to be coordinating a lot of that, lining up next to Edgerrin Cooper, who, Wayne, last year while we were doing these camp practices, you could tell they were building the team and the defense seemingly for him to be an all-pro. I think somewhere he stopped at really good player. I'm excited to see hopefully how 44 can maybe bring some more of that out of him.
And I think, a lot of it, Billy, will be moving him up toward the line of scrimmage, blitzing him from the inside, and maybe even moving him around, so he's inside on one play, maybe he's outside on another play, that kind of thing. But I think you're going to have to see him deployed more as a rusher for him to have enough splash plays to become recognized as a Pro Bowl all-pro caliber player.
Big time, and I think they're going to give him some more of those opportunities, not utilizing just Budda Baker as the only example. But you saw some guys in Arizona when Jonathan Gannon sure wasn't calling the defense. It's his defense that he built there with the Cardinals, really being a multiple scheme. And I there was some buzz and catchphrases caught in the hiring process, Wayne, when he said he doesn't have a scheme. He wants to be malleable to his players. I think that's a pretty impressive way of looking at it, because you do have to – this game is about putting your players in the best positions, and they got a lot of pieces, but you got to have the right maestro to call upon the right notes.
No doubt about that, but coaching is all about putting people in a position to win. They're at their position as a team, putting people in a position to win. That's what it's all about with coaching in this league, and I think on any level. That's something that, again, we're going to see with Edgerrin Cooper. I'm just fascinated to see how they're going to use him, if he will be involved more as a rusher than a coverage linebacker. The other thing about Zaire Franklin is he's not a huge guy. He's 6 feet 235. I was watching him walking up the sideline. Xavier McKinney looks a little taller than him.
Right.
But Zaire Franklin's been around this league. He knows how to make plays. I think this is a guy who's going to be a subtle key to what they do defensively.
And he's stout inside that interior. Very excited to see how this defense kind of rounds into form. We'll see it on the grass in a training camp, or a preseason game, I should say, 1 week from Thursday, August 13th, as they kick off the preseason at the Pittsburgh Steelers, at the Denver Broncos on the 21st, and then here in Green Bay on the 28th, a Friday night against the Arizona Cardinals. They'll have a joint practice earlier on that week with the Cardinals. Wayne, Brian Gutekunst made mention of it. We're going to hear Brian Gutekunst coming up in about 10 minutes here on Training Camp Live, talking about kind of needing and wanting to see some players in the preseason. It feels like that Broncos game might be circled. They went out there for a joint practice a couple of years ago, got some good work, and then had a preseason game there a couple of days later. How difficult is it now with the joint practices kind of overtaking it, but there's nothing like going out on a game field in the NFL?
No, I agree. And I think, the joint practices can certainly supplement what you want to get, the work you want to get for your veterans and the people who are going to start the season. Why? Well, because it's a little more controlled circumstance. Now you work against the other team's best stuff that you're not going to see in a preseason game, okay? Preseason games from a play calling standpoint, from a strategical standpoint, are very vanilla. These practices, you get a chance to see a little bit more of what that other team may run, as long as you're not going to play that team in the regular season.
Right, yes, no doubt.
Because we had one of those, and that didn't go well with A-Rod. But, I really think that still, like you said, you need to get these guys out there for a series or two just to get them to go through it, almost like a dress rehearsal, you know, for the regular season. but also just from a conditioning standpoint, because the hitting is different in a game.
Appreciate the comments that we've gotten on YouTube and X. Kurt said, love the insight. Also, my dad loves Billy's hat. Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
What do you got there in that hat? Run power often.
RPOs. People are always talking about these RPOs in football, Wayne. Let's get the pass up out of there, and let's focus on running the football north and south, and maybe putting some people on their backsides.
You know, and like I said, if you were running the Packers, they wouldn't be running the football 28.9 times per game. It'd be up around 32, 33 with you. You're not going to be throwing more on Jordan Love's play. You're going to be taking more in line and running that running power.
All due respect to Jordan Love in the growing family. Your services are going to be needed, but on a even truncated version. We're going to be running that ball.
We're running the ball.
As possible. The NFL ran the ball a ton over the last couple of years.
They have.
You've seen it change. And Wayne, we say, you're excited to see how this trend goes, that, and the third. The physicality being brought back into the game and the running aspect of the game being so important, I think that one's kind of here to stay, at least for the next couple of years.
I agree, Billy. And why? Well, because in January and February, when you need to be physical and you need to run the ball in a playoff game, that's why I think we're seeing more of an emphasis now throughout the regular season. And we're also seeing running backs starting to get drafted in the first round again. And, of course, Jeremiah Love, right, out of Notre Dame, third overall pick in the draft by Arizona. He's probably going to be the biggest difference maker in this draft.
And walks in as one of the highest paid running backs in football.
In football. That would be a $52 million guaranteed based on where his position and where he was drafted, something like that.
And the part that might be the craziest thing is, Wayne, I heard him say, I got that big contract in the NFL. I don't even have to touch that. I made NIL money. I'm living off my NIL money to the point where I can just put this NFL money right there in the bank. What a different world these guys are playing in. Chad, Billy and Wayne, Packers legends. One of those. Wayne Larrivee, Packers legend. Guy that just talks to you on post games and hopefully makes games a little bit more enjoyable post game for you, because we have more celebrating games after.
You are therapeutic for all of us, Billy, after these games, bringing some reason to the chaos that we just saw that afternoon.
The funniest thing is, Wayne, it's almost more therapeutic for me and probably even better for my wife, because then she doesn't have to listen to me gripe about it for 3.5 hours after. We will be back coming up tomorrow for public practice number 2. You're going to hear some Brian Gutekunst coming up here on the other side here as we wrap up day number 1 of Training Camp Live, presented by the Potawatomi Sportsbook. They wrapped up practice a little bit earlier. We're potentially going to get kicked out here of Ray Nitschke Field, but it's day 1 of the start to the build. Wayne, what's the number one thing for tomorrow? Just availability and nobody popping up on Matt LaFleur's injury list that he talks about?
I would think so, yeah, and I can't imagine. I didn't see anyone get shaken up here today, so they should be clean, and maybe you get a guy or two back off the PUP list. Who knows?
Who knows, and maybe even a news of some contracts. We'll find those out, and I do anticipate a young man that was being rather active, really sweaty after. We're not allowed to talk about the rehab group, but just know number 85 looks like he's ready to roll. Looks like number 85 is excited to come off that PUP list. I watched him squatting 6 plates on Instagram the other night, Wayne. I didn't even know you could fit 6 45-pound plates on each side of the bar.
You got to be kidding me.
Tucker Kraft ready to go. What was that, Armin? No, that was me at Old Country Buffet.
Yeah. 45 pounds.
I'll put those 6 plates back together. Yeah, those at Golden Corral fit a little bit better, and all the food at the Potawatomi Sportsbook. Give me 6 plates of those, and we'll enjoy a day, maybe an afternoon, watching the Brewers coming up here a little bit later on. Great time to go over to the Potawatomi Sportsbook, presenting sponsor of Training Camp Live. Wayne, I'll see you again tomorrow.
See you tomorrow morning,
Always
Billy.
Fun. It is a great day for it. Stay tuned. Brian Gutekunst on the other side, right here on Fox Sports Radio, Wisconsin. It's Training Camp Live, presented by the Potawatomi Sportsbook.
Today's practice at Packers training camp is underway, and we're bringing all of the storylines to you as they happen.
A couple of throws already in camp that have been exceptional.
Welcome back to Training Camp Live, presented by Potawatomi Sportsbook. Let's return to our perch at Ray Nitschke Field and rejoin the voice of the Packers, Wayne Larrivee, and Packers OT host, Bill Schmid.
All right, actually, it's Armin Sarian here back in the Fox Sports 920 studio here in Milwaukee, as you have been listening to Training Camp Live with Bill Schmid and Wayne Larrivee from Ray Nitschke Field. Let's circle back here and get the rest of Packers GM Brian Gutekunst's media availability today as he met with Assembled Media as the Packers open training camp. Here's Brian Gutekunst.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I think I'd like to have enough flexibility to leave the door open, but that would be unlikely just from a timing perspective. We've invested a lot in him, so I think we want to make sure that he's ready to go before we even think about putting him out there.
Right, isn't it unusual to get as many extensions done as you did during the offseason? I mean, a lot of times you get a guy who wants to test free agency.
Yeah.
One way or the other. Was there circumstances just right? Or?
Yeah, Tom, I think that's a good question. I think you guys kind of probably, over the last year and a half or so, we had some pretty good draft classes in there where a lot of these guys really produced, and we had to make some decisions. And as we did that, I think we decided, obviously with the decisions we made, we wanted to lock these guys up early and let these guys grow together, particularly, on the offensive side of the ball with Christian and Jaden, obviously Jordan. Hopefully we can get Tucker done. Matthew's going to be here. He's under contract, obviously, for a few years. So if those guys can grow together, we think that's a really positive thing, the continuity of that. So I think we kind of went down the road this summer thinking this was what we wanted to do. You never know how that's going to go. And certainly I think when you do it a year early, that puts a little bit of risk on the club, and if you play it out, it puts a little bit of risk on the player. So I think, but I think all these deals were good deals for both.
Brian, with Devontae specifically getting that one done, also, what did you see from him last year, especially after the trade with Kenny, how he kind of moved into that?
Yeah, sure. I think Devontae, quite frankly, every time we've given him opportunities and snaps, he's produced, particularly as a pass rusher. And I think he really grew as a run defender since he's been here. Obviously, he's had some health things where he hasn't been able to stay healthy as much as we would have liked. But when he's been in there, he's been very, very impactful. He was on a fifth-year option. Was something we wanted to do. We wanted to extend him. It helps our cap a little bit, too, by doing that. So, again, that was something I think coming out of even with the injury coming out of the season last year, we felt we were going to do.
As you evaluate the roster over the next month and determine some of those final roster spots, but besides what they put on film, are there other aspects that you're really looking for from some of them players?
Yeah, Matt preaches this to him, and it's true, but eyes are on him all the time. How they handle things, how their preparation, how they handle themselves as teammates. Again, their production on the field is what matters most, right? They got to be able to play the game and help us win. But eyes are on them all the time, and how they fit into our culture, what the long-term possibilities for those players that are competing for a roster spot for the first time. All that comes into play. But at the end of the day, everybody gets different opportunities, and you got to make the most of the opportunities that you have.
How often do you get as excited as you did years ago as you do today?
Say that again.
Do you get just as excited as you did all those years ago today for a day like this? Does you ever take it for granted?
Probably sometimes, but I think those of us that are fortunate enough to work in this building, in this profession, it's always been a blessing for me. I'm not good at very much else. I think I could bartend a little bit when I was in college and this, right? So I love it. I love the scouting aspect of the team building part of it. I really do like the training camp, process and watching guys go through these days and the ups and downs of it. And so this is I think across the league, everybody's really energized right now. It's a brand new year, so no matter what happened last year, it's different, and everybody's excited about what they have ahead of them, and that never really changes. So.
Brian, what's the status of Josh Jacobs heading into training camp here?
Yeah, really nothing's changed. Those things are obviously legal matters that are out of our hands. And so, but he'll be out there and we look forward to him being out there. He's obviously such a big, important part of our football team. So, and he's healthy, and I think he looks really good.
Brian, how often has a guy come into camp and really surprised and wowed you with what he's able to do versus what happened in OTAs or maybe camp? And are there certain positions that are more prone to eye openers?
Yeah.
So hats go down changing the game.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I think this goes back to when I wasn't up here for those springs, but every spring you'd call into the office and, the Reggie McKenzie's and the Dorseys of the world would be telling you about how this guy was tearing it up and that guy was tearing it up. By the time we get to pads, that completely flipped, right? And so it changes because of the physical nature and the pads aspect of it for sure. So there's some guys that'll stand out in OTAs and then might hit a wall when they get here. Some guys continue on and they're able to do that. Other guys maybe that didn't look great because maybe they're not the athletes some other guys were. But when the pads come on, it's a different story. So I think you're always surprised every year by a couple guys and maybe the good and bad. But it's I think you expect that. You expect to kind of have some of that, and hopefully we'll have some of that this year as well.
Well, Josh, have you gotten any indication from the league that you'll have your running back this season?
Again, I'm not going to get into any of that stuff. It's really it's out of our hands right now. It's kind of an illegal thing, and until that stuff transpires, not sure the league will get really involved in it.
Can you kind of talk about your thought process since drafting Trey and how you handled the kicking situation? Like long ball kicked for a Super Bowl team as a rookie, Mason kicked for an NFC championship. So it's not that the rookie can't do it. But at the same time, like I think it was in 22, you said if you have a championship caliber team, you have to have a championship type of kicker. So how have you kind of approached it since you picked him and different moves you've made?
Yeah, I think so. Obviously, we just made one, right? So we had Lenny Krieg came in and kicked really well for us in a workout the other day, and so we made that move. He's also an international player as well, so that gives us some flexibility as we head into at the end of the season as far as practice squad. We also signed a tight end that has a tag as well, so which is part of the process there. Obviously, we really like Trey. It wasn't something we went into the draft last year saying, hey, we're going to go target a kicker and try to draft a kicker. But he was the highest ranked guy on our board when that fell. And so we felt that he has a chance to be a very, very good kicker in this league and be one of those championship level kickers. Otherwise, we wouldn't have taken him. As we know, with all positions, but particularly kickers, it can take some time to become a great kicker in this league. So we really like Trey. We really like what he's made of, and we'll kind of see how it goes. But we're really optimistic that he has a chance to be one of those guys.
Do you have to scour the waiver wire for a long snapper, or is that?
We may have to do that. Yes, not necessarily the waiver wire. Aaron, there's some guys on the street. We'll probably bring some guys in to work out. He's got a little bit of a calf. Nothing long term, but it does disrupt practice when you don't have a guy who can snap it. So special teams guys don't like that. So I don't see what the problem is. We got a jugs machine. We got lots of things to do, but it does disrupt practice. And quite frankly, with a rookie kicker, we want to have as much, practice there as we can get. So it'd be nice to have Matt out there. And there may be a time where he's able to do some of the snapping before he can do a lot of the running. That's really more of the issue. So, but hopefully we can get him back soon because that continuity there is important.
Back to Jason's kicker question, though. How much patience, how much riding the wave, or like a guy who growing to a job can you afford to do those? You can go pretty well.
Yeah, I'd like to think that I'm going to have more patience than I've had. It's interesting, since the last kicker we've had here, that's been obviously was Mason, who was really consistent for us. In the regular season, we've been at a higher percentage than Mason was, right? With the kickers, all the different kickers we've had, it's just the playoffs. That's where we've really struggled. And obviously that's important to me, right? That's the most important thing is to be able to make those kind of kicks. So I'd like to have some patience here, but at the end of the day, any player, if he's costing us opportunities to win football games, then we're gonna have to look at that. But again, we really have a lot of confidence in Trey and what he's going to be able to do. But he is a rookie kicker, and he's got a lot to learn and to earn before he gets there.
We talked about after the season about the need to finish games, and you guys reiterated that message a lot in the spring. How do you evaluate something intangible like that?
Yeah, I think we're not going to be able to evaluate it until we get there, right? I think certainly. I know Matt and his staff have put a lot of thought in the preparation phases of how we're preparing for situational football. I think that's really important in today's game. But it's proof's going to be in the pudding. We got to get there and we got to do it. And I expect this team that will do it. I think that's it's an important part. And it wasn't like last year. We didn't have evidence early in the season of being able to do that and put teams away. But we weren't able to do it late when it mattered. And I think this team has, over the last few years, has accomplished some good things, but what we're trying to accomplish, we haven't been able to get over that step. And so I think the only way you're going to get better is if you intentionally try to. So, and it's not like we hadn't before, but I think it's something that we put a lot of emphasis on, and I expect us to be able to accomplish that, but we won't know until we get there.
Ryan, is Luke Musgrave something long-term? You mentioned an injury earlier.
Mm-hmm.
How big of a year is this for him in his fourth-year contract?
Yeah, big year for him, and we're working through it to see if it's going to be something long-term or not. We've always around here with head, necks, and hearts, it's a little bit more sensitive than some of the other injuries, right? You got to take that a little bit slower and make sure that what you know is what you know. This is a neck injury, so we'll take our time and make sure we know what we know before we put it at any kind of risk.
Speaking of tight ends, how much conversation do you have with Matt throughout the offseason as far as trends around the league and what you do to build your roster and even the hiring of a defensive coordinator?
Yeah.
You saw so many tight ends go way earlier, I think, than a lot of people were expecting in the draft. Kind of leaning into this 13 personnel, really heavy, trying to get them in base, et cetera. How much conversation do you have with Matt as far as this is what we want to look like and how we might be able to take advantage of some of these trends?
Yeah, we talk a lot about it. And I think that's the one, it really, in my opinion, and as you've seen some of the emergence of more tight ends, is because everybody started running so much more nickel, right? So you wanted to get bodies on there that could handle that, particularly in the run game, and just gives you a lot more versatility. Last year was a really good draft for as far as volume for tight ends goes. I think you'll see that continue for a little while. It always kind of swings. You always see some of that, and certainly that's where we are now. And I think as Matt and his staff build out what they want to do each and every year, either those conversations happening on how we have to kind of look at the team and how we might have to manage the roster as far as numbers go. So every year is a little bit different. It's certainly something we talk about a lot, but I think the one thing over the last 5 or 6 years is the rise of, I think when I first entered the league, teams were in nickel maybe 30% of the time, 35% of the time, and it was usually the third corner who was a smaller player that was not asked to do much in the run game because he wasn't on the field during those downs. Now it's really your base defense. Nickel is your base defense. You're out there 70 to 80% of the time in that package, and that player has to insert in the run game. So they become more safety body types than corner body types, but they're asked to do a lot. So that particular position has become extremely valuable because of everything they're not only asked to do, cover, man, insert in the run game, the zone stuff, and then really the communication with the inside linebackers and the other safeties. So it's a lot asked at that position, and I think that'll continue for a while.
Have you guys looked at how much playing in the preseason has any impact? Have you done any studies on whether that has affected the start of the season?
Are you talking about like with injuries and stuff, Tom? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, and whether it benefits you to play them a little bit more, and is there anything you're changing this year?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we've run on analytics on that, and quite frankly, it can change a little bit from time to time. I think it's important that they get out there a little bit. I think it's always been, my thought that if you can get them out there a little bit, but at the same time, not much. I do think since the joint practices have become a trend, you can get a lot of that work done where you're not particularly exposing the quarterback.
All right, a little bit of Goody from earlier as he met with the assembled media to open training camp. Thanks to Wayne and Billy, who were on the perch today at Ray Nitschke Field for training camp day one. An exciting moment. And they'll be back tomorrow, of course, and the rest of camp to bring you training camp live. Brought to you by Potawatomi Sportsbook. Thanks to them. Just a reminder, you can get the huddle, of course, at 5 a.m. Normal time. Drew Olson, Hunter filling in for me, Armin Sarian tomorrow and Friday. And you can hear Billy and Wayne once again, training camp live, same time, same place, where you heard it today. Fox Sports 920, Fox Sports 1070 AM, of course, live on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. Training camp live brought to you by Potawatomi Sportsbook. We'll see you next time.